Omo a Guru Vajradhara Suma Timu Nisha Sane Karma Utta Vardanya Shri Bar Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om a Guru Vajradhara Suma Timu Nisha Sane Karma Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhar Suma Timu Nisha Sane Karma Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhar Suma Timu Nisha Sane Karma Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhar Suma Timu Nisha Sane Karma Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Hakyuke Kudang Dagi Lo Pakyuke Sundandaki Pakyuke Tudang Dagi Teyerme Chiktu Jingialo Pakyuke Kudang Dagilu Pakyuke Sundandagingan Pakyuke Tudang Dagi Teyerme Chiktu Jingilo Makyuke Kudang Dagilu Makyuke Sundandagingan Makyuke Tudang Dagi Teyerme Chiktu Jingilo Om Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Swaha Om Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Swaha Om Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Swaha. Sangye chedan sogi chonam la chancho pardo dani kyapsu chi dagi jinso gibe sonam ge drola penchire sangye drubra sho Sangye chedan sogi chonam la chancho pardo dani kyapsu chi dagi jinso gibe sonam ge Drola pinchira sangye drupara sho sangye chedan tsogi chonamla chancho pardo dani kyapsu chi dagi chushe gibe sonamgi drola pinchira sangye drupara sho. In the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. So, if we observe around us, it doesn't matter where we go, what we observe, cultures, life, situations, everything exists in a cyclic way. Things start, they grow, they develop, they get to a maximum state, and then slowly they start again to degenerate, and slowly they die. And actually when they die, they are transformed into something else. No? If we look to history, that's how things happen. There is not one thing that is linear constantly. Everything that is happening has this process of being born, growing older, getting to the maximum power, and then slowly losing and degenerating. This is like this for everything. And if we look to spiritual traditions and cultures and everything, it happens the same. So, it's interesting that to see in which point we find ourselves within a tradition, because any tradition that we look to, it is at the present moment at one of these phases. No? And each phase has a different aspect. Each phase have a different characteristic, and positive and negative, as always. No? And if we look well, like Buddhism itself, it had moments of growth, of a maximum moment, and then of degeneration. And then, for example, when Buddhism was developing in Tibet, was a moment of degeneration in India. And nowadays, when Buddhism is developing in the West, it is a moment of degeneration in Tibet. No, this doesn't mean that there is no more Buddhism in Tibet. There are thousands of monasteries. There are still many people practicing. Just a few months ago, there was Kala Chakra empowerment with more than 100,000 people participating in Tibet. There are many things happening there. This doesn't mean that it's in complete degeneration, but the process, comparing to the past, is a process of degeneration. Not much for the number of people, but for the way how it is developing. This is the main thing. One of the main differences for me is when a tradition it's already gone after its apex, its maximum point, and it starts to degenerate, it's a moment in which everyone takes things for granted. And we do not question anymore the aspects of the teachings or the tradition, or if it's a culture, it's a moment where we just leave the results of what was done and it's not being created again. No? So, like for example, if we look to our own religion of that it's most common in the West, like so we have the Christian tradition and the Jewish mostly. If we look, there are many people that follow tradition and follow a religion, not because they feel that religion is basically useful for them for whatever reason, it's simply because they are part of that religion. So I was born, my parents are from this religion, my grandparents are from this religion, my great-grandparents were from this religion, so I am part of the same. It's not a matter of how much I really see benefit in it and how I want to use it for my own spiritual growth. It's just a matter of being part of it sometimes. No? So when this happens, we do not question things anymore. We stop going deep into the aspects of teachings and of the tradition, basically. And this is a sign of the generation, actually, from my point of view. There is not more at that freshness of needing to understand and growing and developing and adapting. This is losing. So when a tradition is in the process of actually being reborn, of growing, there is the freshness of learning and understanding and needing to adapt. Sure, there is the instability. When it's in the other part of the process, there is more stability. Everything is more stable. But when we're in the beginning, it's still more unstable, but still there is this freshness, no? And nowadays, according to our own tradition, we can see both aspects. We can see in Tibet, we are in a process of degeneration, which is for me quite clear, you know. And I have seen in different countries, like which can be in Tibet or in Thailand, other places, where many people just take for granted being Buddhist, but they don't really ask very often what is the meaning of being a Buddhist and how to adapt and how to use it as a method of spiritual development, truly and actually. So, on the same time, if we look in the West, we are in the moment of growth from the very beginning. And this is a very special moment. I really think it's something that we need to somehow rejoice about being in this process, because it gives us the possibility not only to get in contact, but to want to understand and to go in deeper way. For example, in Tibet, when Buddhism originally arrived, it arrived with Guru Padmasambhava around 1,500 years ago. Then, after some time, it was degenerated again, because there was one king that was against Buddhism, which was called King Langtarma. And when King Langtarma came, like at that time, the king was very powerful. So, because the king was against Buddhism, it was completely destroyed and degenerated again. And then, on the beginning of the 11th century, came Atisha. So, as Atisha came, around the year 1050 or something like this, he came to Tibet, and he needed to adapt the teachings, because he found himself in a place where there was something of Buddhism, but still there was a lot of confusion. So he did something very special, which was taking all the teachings from all the different parts and putting them together into one coherent path, which was something that before was not there. Before you had all the teachings, but there was no any specific texts and teachings in which all the different parts of the path were put together into a linear, coherent process of development. So, this is what Atisha did, and he called it the Lamrim, what nowadays we know as Lamrim, which is Lam means path, Rim means stages, stages of the path, stages of the gradual path to enlightenment. So, even at that time, Atisha, he had permission to stay in Tibet only 2 years, because he was from the monastery of Vikramashila, and when he was requested to go to Tibet after a long story, and the abbot gave the permission only for 2 years for him to go to Tibet. So he went there, and then when he arrived in Tibet, he saw that there was something about Buddhist teachings, but it was very much disconnected, one part from the other. No one had really the idea, commonly at least, how to put all the teachings into one path. So at the time he wrote this text, which is called the Chanchu Lamdrun, which means the lamp on the path to enlightenment, and which is the basis for Lamrim. And 2 years after, he tried to go back to India, but there was a war around the area of Nepal. So he couldn't go. It was too dangerous. So they were able to send a messenger, and he took the text of the Lamdrun, of the basis of Lamrim, to India. And when the abbot of Vikramashila received the text, he was so touched about it, and he said, Atisha would have never written something so special if he was living in India. Because teachings were just taken for granted. He would just have repeated what was already there. He would not have adapted it in a new way. So he said, oh, that's so wonderful. So please remain in Tibet as long as you like. That's more beneficial for the teaching. So what it means is that where we are in a moment of freshness, when a tradition is being reborn somehow, it has this necessity of adaptation, and this naturally gives energy to new things. And this is necessary for survival of a tradition. Okay? And we find ourselves at this moment right now. Okay? So this makes, for me, we're having a special connection with the Lamrim, because Lamrim were teachings that were specially adapted to that moment also. Okay? Then, generally speaking, there are 3 different types of texts, from what I understand, within Buddhist teachings. We have, maybe we can say 4 types. There are the original sutras and tantras of Buddha. Then from the commentaries, normally we have 3 types of texts, which is like the, the philosophy texts, which we call tsenishung in Tibetan. And basically, they are texts which they explain things. So what is a Buddha? What is Dharma? What is bodhicitta? How to develop? And go in a very logical way and explaining in a very detailed manner. Normally, many of these texts, in the most modern ones, let's say from the past centuries, they are mostly structured, divided into 3 parts, which is Shenlo Gakpa, Ranlo Shakpa, Shenlo Tsoba Poma. What Shenlo Gakpa means, where the points of view of other people are established and they are refuted. So other people say this, and that about this subject. They are wrong because this, and that reason. So there is a debate going on and explaining why different points of view are wrong. Then the second one, Ranlo Shakpa, is explaining one's own point of view and saying, look, bodhicitta is like this because of this, and that reason. And then again, there is the part which is the writer, he will bring hypothetical questions and doubts that may come. So if someone may have this doubt, the answer is this. If someone may have that doubt, the answer is this. Okay? So it's a very extensive way. When I was studying in this way, sometimes I was even a little tired. I would just jump the text and go directly to the one's own point of view. I would say, Lama Tsongkhapa, I trust you. What do you mean, Okay, what other people taught and why they are wrong. It's actually very good to have a deeper understanding, but sometimes I would just go directly to the actual point. And but this is a way of teaching which still many people study in this way, but it's a way of study. It's not just a way of listening and learning in this way. And if we look nowadays, if we would come here and just teach in that way, I think maybe 3 or 4 people will remain, no more than that. Because it really needs study and it's quite extensive and complex and so on. Then we have another type of text, which are the teachings which normally we put in the category of Lamrim and Lojong, which basically Lamrim and Lojong means the stages of the path, or the gradual path to enlightenment, and mental training and mind training, which are teachings that are not there to explain things so much, but to induce the practitioner into different levels of understanding and consciousness. So they will not necessarily explain what is the actual meaning of impermanence and why phenomena are impermanence and why do we see impermanent phenomena as permanent. This is part of the more philosophical aspect. They are going to induce us by examples and so on to feel that everything is impermanent. So it's a different way of guiding us. Okay? And these are also very important teachings. And the one that we are going to open today is basically connected to that part. Then there is a third type of teachings and texts which are well known, which normally we call sadhanas, which are like manuals of meditation. Are texts that guides us on the practices of meditation in order to develop certain stages of consciousness. So, with visualization and recitation. So normally, to have a complete path, we need all the three. We need to have the understanding. Then we need to induce our mind to certain awarenesses and status of mind. And then we need to familiarize ourselves with all of this through meditation. So all of these three are actually important. So I wanted to bring to you, during these few days that we have together, actually these three aspects. The philosophical aspects, in between we will give explanations. So this will be there also. But we'll be mainly following a text of Lamrim. Also because the Lamrim, it has this very special aspect that it was developed within a moment of Buddhism developing in Tibet. And we are in a moment of Buddhism developing in the West. So it's a moment of adaptation of, like adapting to our own mentality, let's put it that way. So Lamrim is very special in that level. So on the other side, I think Lamrim is very important. One of the reasons I chose to do this also is because it's on the very basis of our path. And we need basic teachings. Only to have the meditation aspect is not enough. We need explanation, and we need also to induce ourselves to certain awarenesses. This is also very important. And this Lamrim, the text that I chose, is directly connected to our lineage because it was written by Pabongkha Dechen Nyingpo. Pabongkha Rinpoche was the guru of Trijang Rinpoche, that was the guru of Lama Ganchen. So, and Pabongkha Rinpoche was the guru of almost all the masters at his time of his own tradition. For example, His Holiness the Dalai Lama is a disciple of Kyabje Rinpoche and Kyabje Rinpoche. Both of them were disciples of Pabongkha Rinpoche and so on. Okay, so in this way, really, Pabongkha Rinpoche was a very, very important master. And this is a text that was written directly by him in a very special manner, actually. And I received the transmission of this text by Pabongkha Rinpoche himself, the reincarnation. And after I received it also from my teacher in Tibet. So it is for me, it's a very special text. I will explain a little bit later why. But together with this, between these days, I like also to put some emphasis in our own meditation practice. So these three aspects: philosophy, guiding on the path, and meditation. So we will do all the three during these days. In the meditation, we will do mainly the practice of self-healing united with the practice of the 5 great mothers. Okay? So this is more or less how I wanted to structure these days. And I think it's very precious that we are in this moment of freshness. And at the same time, it's important to remember that Buddhism is being developed here. We are still in the very beginning. But it's very important that it needs to grow before, on the other side, it's completely degenerated. So we can have this point where the two meet. And then we can continue with the tradition. Otherwise, it's not possible. It's not something, if in one side completely degenerates, then there is nothing to be reborn on the other. So the two need to meet somehow. Okay, and this is happening nowadays. Okay. So, the text that we will follow was written by Pabongkha Rinpoche, but it was written in a very special manner, in a very different way than most of the texts that we have. Because normally the texts are or written directly or a transcript of a teaching. Like Lamrim Namdrolaj, Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, was written actually by Trijang Rinpoche. As he was listening to the teachings of Pabongkha Rinpoche, he was writing very quickly and transcribing his teachings, basically. No? But one important thing is that in the teachings of Lamrim, as in many others, it's not enough just to understand. We need to understand, then we need to reflect, comprehend, and then we need to meditate in order to realize it. So when Pabongkha Rinpoche received the teachings of Lamrim, he received from one of his gurus. And as he would receive the teaching, his guru was staying in one place, like in a meditation place, like in a cave. And he was staying in another cave, like 2 hours walk from there. So he would go to his guru and he will receive teachings, let's say, for instance, on the preciousness of human life. And then he would go back to meditate on that point. He would just receive teachings on that specific point. And then he would go back to meditate on it. And the insights that he would have, his understanding and insights, he would write it down. And then once he thought, okay, now I got it, he would go back to his teacher and say, okay, I got this, this, and that insight. And sometimes his teacher would say, wonderful, let's go to the next point then. And another times his teacher would say, oh, go back to meditate, you didn't understand enough. So to meditate on the whole Lamrim took for him 1.5 years, like this going back and forth with his guru. No? And during this time, all his insights and understandings, he was writing as like in a sort of diary. No? So years later, when Pabongkha Rinpoche was already much older, his disciples found within his things all these notes of all his experience during Lamrim retreat. And it was said that actually it was written on old Chinese rice paper. So some of the papers were already deteriorated. So not all the writing was able to be legible. Some of it was already completely gone. So they took everything that they could together. Luckily, Pabongkha Rinpoche was still alive. So under his guidance, they put all this manuscript together and they made one text, which is the text that we are going to read together. I received the transmission from Pabongkha Rinpoche, the reincarnation. I received from the abbot of Tashilumpo in Tibet. And I received it, the first time I received these teachings was from one of my teachers, which was Geshe Champa Tekchuk, that already passed away. He was the abbot of the monastery of Siraje in India. And I used to go to see him very often. And he would say to me, oh, it's wonderful you study philosophy, but you also need to do some Lamrim. And then I would say to him, please teach me. And he'd say, oh, sorry, now I am abbot, I have no time. And so in the moment that he stopped being abbot, I said, now you are not anymore abbot, so maybe you could teach me. He said yes. Then this was the text that he taught me at the time. Okay, it was a very special experience. So on the same time, it's the first time that I know this text has been translated into English and consequently also into Italian. And so sure, as we will go through the text, there are some things that we still need to fix on the translation. But it's a very special text because it comes from the direct experience. It's more like a text in which he's sharing his experience more than teaching anything. Okay? And for me, it's a very, very strong and very straightforward text also, as Pabongkha Rinpoche has always been. Okay? Gyalkunye shi rochi gyurukar dagi kalngol talam tsul sungne sewa manor lamla tritsepa tinchen lama dreme chivrshuk. Dancing as a magical display that is of the same taste of exalted wisdom of all victors. You take an ordinary form, following my fortune, and guide us on the unmistaken path out of your compassion. You, kind Guru, please remain at my crown, inseparable from me. So at this first verse, which may look as a simple verse of praise and request, actually is where Pabongkha Rinpoche is bringing to us the first and very important step on the path to enlightenment, which is to rely correctly upon a spiritual guide. That's the first step on the path to enlightenment, which Pabongkha Rinpoche is bringing to us here. Why is it so? Let's try to make it simple. Every one of us, we have one very, very strong wish, and that's the wish of being happy, of not suffering. You know, that's what is the strength that makes us to do everything we do. It's the strong wish to be happy and not to suffer. And we do everything we do actually thinking it's the best for our own happiness. That's what we do. But we are guided by our ignorance, and through that we are constantly in the same cycle. For example, as one time I was talking to kids in a school, and I asked them if they wanted a toy, and as I asked them, do you want a toy? And they all said yes. And then I asked them, have ever happened that you got the toy that you wanted in your birthday or in Christmas? And they said yes. Were you happy when you got the new toy? Yes. How long did it make you happy? Long or short? And they said short time. Do you still have the toy? Yes. Does it still make you happy as before? No. Do you want another toy? Yes. The point is that as we go along with our life, we are just changing toys because we don't know a different game to play. So we project our happiness in material things, we project our happiness in sensual pleasures of the body, we project our happiness into our image and fame and power, we project our happiness in relationships and so on. But the fact is that, have we ever experienced any one of these four, or the unity of the four, that really brings a stable state of happiness and satisfaction? Actually not. But even though we know that, we don't know any other way how to do things. So we say, okay, better to have momentary pleasure and happiness than having none, right? So let's continue doing what we know how to do. At least I have moments of joy, and then moments of suffering, and then moments of joy, and then moments of suffering. And I go on and on, like going up and down, but that's what I know, and that's, at least I have some moments of joy. Okay, but I don't know other way how to do it. That's why we need a spiritual guide, someone that has a deeper experience, that is not anymore in these ups and downs as we are, that have gone beyond it, and that can show us the path how to go there. It's like someone that has already opened the eyes and can see reality in a different way of what I see. And using a metaphor, someone that has opened his eyes and then can give me his hand for myself that I'm blind, so he can show me how to walk, going through the right path, even though I cannot see. So gradually I can also open my eyes and walk by myself. That's the point. So basically, it is the fact that I by myself, I am not able to eliminate completely my suffering, to develop a permanent and stable state of happiness and satisfaction. So please, Guru Buddha, guide me. So basically, the concept of the Guru or the spiritual guide is someone that has a higher spiritual development that we do, that can guide us in order for us to develop our own self spiritually. That's a very simple way. So why do we need a guide? Because otherwise we can only do based on what we already know. Even when we need to understand something new, what is the resource? What are the resources that we have to understand something new? What we already know. If we really observe in this way, it's quite interesting to see how difficult it is to create something really new. Because what are the resources that we have to understand and to act and to perceive? What we already know. Our culture, our experiences, our mentality, what we are. So, that's why interacting with others is so important. And interacting with others that have a deeper experience and a deeper view and a deeper knowledge than us is so important, because they can help us to open our mind to things that we had never perceived and understood before. That's the importance of a spiritual guide. So, here, Pabongkha Rinpoche brings us the importance of the spiritual guide, talking to us about 4 qualities of the way how we should rely upon the Guru. Because relying upon the Guru is not something so obvious, especially in our own moment in Buddhism, which means we are very new into Buddhism, and in our culture there is no the culture of the Guru, right? I think for most of us, I don't see anyone here who I believe that as in our childhood we grew up with the Guru of our parents nearby. And seeing our parents relying upon a Guru, and we say, oh, that is their Guru, and then, okay, here I will also have my Guru. We don't have this, right? So it takes time for us to understand what is a Guru, how to relate correctly, what is the right way of relying upon the Guru, what's even the meaning of it. It takes time really to understand and to shape it. and we are going to mix with other things, and then maybe it's a little right, then it's a little wrong, and how can we put together? It's not that obvious in that way, okay? And it takes time. It took time in the past, it takes time in the present, and it's all fine in that way. That's why we need to train, we need to rely correctly upon the Guru, but it's something that we need to cultivate, actually. So, Pabongkha Rinpoche here brings 4 aspects, as he says. Dancing as a magical display that is of the same taste of the exalted wisdom of all victors, which means the dance, the magical dance here, or dance as a magical display, represents the way of emanation. It's like the emanation body, okay? The Nirmanakaya, which is the emanation body. You emanate yourself as a magical display, but in nature you are the Dharmakaya. You are the wisdom, the exalted wisdom of all Buddhas. Okay? So you manifest yourself, which is like a magical illusion, because truly this is not your true nature. This is just the way how you're manifesting yourself. Because your true nature is the exalted wisdom of all victors, which is the Dharmakaya. In other ways, you manifest yourself as the so-called Nirmanakaya, the body of emanation, which is that emanates according to the needs of the beings. But your true nature is the Dharmakaya, which is a pure state in a very subtle body. It's a very pure state. So this is, if we look to this, dancing as a magical display, it's like you emanate yourself in a way that you adapt to the mentality of us, our needs, but in the true nature you are something much more pure and deep, which is you are the actual Dharmakaya, you are the same inseparable nature of all Buddhas. In other words, it says also, what is the function of all Buddhas? To help other sentient beings. That's their main objective, to help others. How can they help others? By teaching and guiding through the Dharma, to the spiritual path. That's the best way of helping. So who is actually helping me? My Guru. So he's doing the job of all the Buddhas. That's why he's inseparable of all the Buddhas. This is making it a long logic short and simple. So you take an ordinary form following my fortune. Here by fortune, we mean our own conditions. You manifest yourself to me according to my mentality and according to my capacity. This is something very important. If there would be something that is perfect, let's say I have someone in front of me that is completely free of all defilements, completely like a perfect Buddha. Am I able in my own imperfection to perceive perfection? No. Whenever I see, I listen, I touch, anything that I perceive inevitably as a reflection of my own self and capacity. So you manifest yourself adapting to my own capacity and my own conditions. That's so kind. That's so kind. Making an example from a more gross level is like when Kyabje Pabongkha, which was one Lama that went to Mongolia in the very, very beginning of Buddhism in Mongolia. It was the time, I'm not sure of the Genghis Khan or Kublai Khan. Anyhow, there were the different Khans there, and they were fighting between themselves. And what happened was that this great master arrived there, and when he arrived in Mongolia, he saw that people were not ready really to receive teachings of the Buddha. They had no trust. Their mind was completely busy with other things. So he needed to create a relation of trust. So he started showing to them that he was the best in what they thought was the most important. So they have their own Mongolian way of fighting. So he became the best fighter. So he was the strongest man, winning everyone. He was the best with women. He was the best in the war, in the art of war, which for them were very important. He was a very good artist, making beautiful statues, incredible, beautiful statues. He was like the best in everything that they knew, and it was important for them. So what happened was that, with that, one moment there were the two clans that were fighting. Both of them had good relation with him and had great respect for him. So, and he managed to make peace between the two. In the beginning, the two clans could not even talk to each other. They started fighting any moment they got near to each other. So he found a solution. He found something they had in common. And what they had in common? Sniff, the tobacco to sniff, no? So what had happened is like, he said, okay, when the two guys meet, you don't need to talk. Don't exchange a word, just exchange the tobacco. So he made this tradition, they would meet and they would each one give to the other, which was a sign of trust. They could put poison inside, who knows, no? Was a sign of trust. Then they would take, oh, your tobacco is good. How did you make it? Oh, mine is like this, like that. And then they find something in common. And from this, slowly, he was able to make peace between them. That's why up to now in Mongolia, when people meet, they exchange the tobacco, coming from that same tradition. Anyhow, in the moment that they was able to make peace between them, they said, oh, but now we need a guide. We need like a king. And the only person we truly trust from both sides is you. So please be our king. And he said, with one condition, you need to follow what I say. And they said, yes. And the first thing that he made once he became king, he said, now we become a Buddhist. And he started bringing and teaching Buddha Dharma after that. Because truly he was a Lama, he was a Buddhist practitioner, but he did all of that in order to be able to reach them. This is one example of you take an ordinary form following my fortune. He was not interested in the fighting and in all the rest. He was interested in teaching the Dharma, but that's the way how he found to go in and to get into their mind. Okay? So this is an example when you take an ordinary form following my fortune. I saw many times Lama Ganchen adapting himself according to the culture and the context where he was. Many, many, many times. So this is also a way of adapting to our own needs and to our own mentality. You guide us on the unmistaken path out of your compassion. This is another important point. The Guru is the one that guides us on the path. He's a spiritual guide. The function of the Guru is not to be a good friend. He can also be a good friend. But the function is to guide us on the path to enlightenment. That's the main function. So what does that mean? It means that there is a path and there is an objective. And there is someone teaching me and guiding me how to walk on that path. It's like if I want to go from here to India to the Kailash, let's say, walking. I need someone to train me how to walk well. I need someone to teach me how to breathe correctly on the path. I need someone to show me how to read the maps. I need someone to help me how to make the visas. I need all of that in order to get where I want. But if I train myself very well, but I don't walk on the path, there's no meaning. Or if I become very good friend with all the trainers and teachers, but I don't walk on the path, there is no meaning. Similar to that, we can make another metaphor, which is if there is a doctor, and he's the best doctor to cure a certain disease, being a friend of that doctor is not enough. I need to ask him to help me to cure my disease. And it's a complete different way of relating as asking him to cure my disease and asking him simply to be my friend. And sometimes I go to him because he's a doctor and I like being nearby to him. So I just say, oh, I am a little bit sick, but actually I don't care about getting cured. All I want is to be by his side. Okay? There's a big difference between the two. Is this clear, no? Okay? So when we say relying correctly upon the Guru, or relying correctly upon our spiritual guide, is a spiritual guide for the spiritual path. So here as it says, guide us on the unmistaken path. I take refuge in you as a guide on the path, which I need to walk with my own legs. And I have no eyes to see that path. So please show me the path which I cannot see on the moment. Be my guide. That's what we request. Out of love and compassion towards me. And the last verse says, you, kind Guru, please remain at my crown, inseparable from me. That's also a very important point, because the first way of reading this verse may bring us the idea that we are asking our Guru, oh, please stay there, don't move. As if it was something that depends on him. But what does it mean, stay on my crown? inseparable from me. The crown, the head, is the highest part of our body. Okay? Anything that we put on the highest part of our body means we have great respect towards it. Maybe nowadays we don't have that much in our culture, but not long ago in our own Western culture and also in the East, this is still very, very strong. When you touch your head at someone's feet, it means you're giving the highest of the respect to that person. If there is anything that we respect, we put on our head, this means we are putting on the highest part of our body, which means we have great respect for it. So when we say, please Guru Buddha, remain at my crown, it means, may I never lose faith and respect and gratitude. May I always keep you as pure, as sacred as you are. And may you be inseparable from me. May I always keep the line on, the connection. May always the connection be on. And may I always keep you with respect and gratitude. That's the most important thing for me. So may I always keep you at my crown. Okay? So please remain at my crown. Who is the one that can take you out of my crown? Actually me, not you. Okay? So here we have 4 points which Pabongkha Rinpoche is bringing us about relying correctly upon the Guru. First of all, it's in the beginning showing us that the first thing that we need to do is to rely correctly upon the Guru. Second, it's bringing us these 4 points. The dancing as a magical display that is the same, that is of the same taste of the exalted wisdom of all Buddhas. You manifest yourself in an ordinary way, but you are inseparable of all Buddhas. Second verse, you take an ordinary form following my fortune. The ordinary appearance that you have, it is in according to my own karma, to my own capacity, to my own abilities. Third point, you guide us on the unmistaken path out of your compassion. Why I rely upon you? So that you can guide me on the path to enlightenment. So there is a path that I need to follow. And fourth point, you kind Guru, please remain at my crown inseparable from me, which means may I always respect you. May I always rely correctly upon you. May I always cultivate my faith and gratitude and respect as something very important from me. And when I say inseparable from me, may I always keep the connection on. That's very important. Okay? So with that, I say we can in a very brief way conclude this first part and we go on with the rest. Okay? But I think it's so beautiful. When we look at this text, it may look just as a sort of a poem, but it has very deep meaning at every part that we go through it. Okay? Well, all the rest of the text is not done in a poetic way, it's in a very straightforward. So Pabongkha Rinpoche starts in a poetic way, using this both as a praise, request for blessings, but as showing us the importance to rely correctly upon the Guru. Then the rest of the text it goes in a very straightforward manner. Okay. Karsan penchentu mashivar. Tanang yar langne tekpa chembo cho chegyu chungwa di shintu keba sang. Tachir mashitsun lakbar teringi nima dila tunche nimbo lentuba chenyam shen majongyang teringi nima di chikpu dakpo gyapko. It's extremely fortunate that we did not die during the night, but have awakened this morning and have the chance to practice the Mahayana Dharma. We should think of taking this essence of great value now, and in general before death, or even for just for today. Even if we cannot do other things, we should keep merely today as meaningful. So, as we start reading the text, as it says, I will just read the Tibetan always because to check the translation, and mostly because the text was originally written in Tibetan. I received the transmission in Tibetan, so I like to pass the transmission in Tibetan also. Karsan penchentu mashibar, talam tanang yar langne, tekpa chembo cho chegyu chunga di shinto kelwa sang, tachir Mashitsun lakbar taregi nima di dila tön chembo tön chen nyingpo len tuba chenyam shen ma jongyang teringi nima di chikpo la dakpo gyago. It's extremely fortunate that we did not die during the night. Basically, it's saying the Tibetan literally is a bit different. The meaning is okay, but it's saying it is extremely fortunate that we did not die up to now. In these past days, we didn't die up to now. And we have awakened this morning. So we have not died during the night or the days before. And we have awakened this morning and have the chance to practice the Mahayana Dharma. We should think of taking the essence of great value now. And general before. We should think of taking this essence of great value now, or in general before death, or even just for today. Even if we cannot do other things, we should keep merely today as meaningful. Actually, this part, it's bringing us the preciousness of this life. But in order to understand this, it comes with another aspect which is implicit here, which is the fact of living in a cyclic existence. There are different ways how we can see our own existence. One way is seeing that we have a linear life, which means I was born, I will die, and there is nothing more after that, before or after, that's all. Another way of seeing reality, I was born, before being born there was another life and many others before, I'm going to die, and after death there's going to be other lives. So I live in a cyclic existence, okay? This makes a complete difference. There was one Tibetan master that went to the United States in the 70s. And whenever someone came to him asking for teachings, he would first make a question. Do you believe in reincarnation? Truly. If the person would say yes, then he would teach the person. If the person would say no, then he said, okay, sorry, up to that point I cannot teach you. Because it's a complete different way of living reality, of experiencing reality, if we live in a linear or in a cyclic way. The linear is there is point A, which is birth, and then there is the point B, which is death, and who knows, there may be a point C, which is paradise or hell, okay? Or whatever. The fact is that most of us in our culture, we live in this way. We experience reality in a linear way. A, birth, B, death, who knows if there is something else after or not. Then, what happened with that is that when we experience life in this way, what really matters is what we do. That's what is really important. I have this only one opportunity. I need to use it the best. And if we look which are the examples of success for us, normally are people that have made many things, that were successful in their jobs. If they were extremely unsatisfied and sad and lived in deep conflicts within themselves, it doesn't matter. The important thing is what they did. These are the examples that we have in our society mostly. Instead, on the other side, if we look from the cyclic point of view, we have point A, birth, point A, B, death, but point A and point B, they joined together. And after point B, death, what we have? We have birth. And after birth, there is death, and after death, there is birth. So it's like repeating the same thing again and again. And within this perspective, things change. It's like if we need to repeat the same situation every day. If we need to repeat the same thing every day, what becomes important is not what we are doing, but what do we become out of that experience. And this brings a complete new perspective. So the preciousness of this life is the opportunity that we have to use the life as something meaningful, which means to live this life as a mean and not as a goal. When we live the life as one only life, we live this life as if it was the final goal is to live life itself. When we live in the context of constant rebirth, we live the life as the life is the method, is a mean to realize something else. Okay? So, based on this life is so precious. It's such a special opportunity that we have to make something truly meaningful. That's why we say this life is so special. That's why we say this life is so meaningful. So we have two aspects. The life is meaningful and rare. Precious and rare. Not everything that is rare is necessarily precious. Not everything that is precious necessarily is rare. But we have here something that is precious and rare. Okay, so let's just understand this point first, so that we can understand the rest of the verse. Okay, why is our life so precious and rare? This is a very important point in order to understand this here. It's rare because the opportunity we have is rare. It's not a simple human life. Sure, human life is precious, but this is not the type of preciousness we are talking here. The simple fact of being a human doesn't mean we have a rare and precious life. It must have certain conditions in order to be really rare and so precious. So let's just try quickly to understand what it means. It's rare because we have conditions which are, we have the correct conditions to follow a spiritual path. Around more than half of the population of this planet, okay, which is around more than 5 billion people, are or in the state of starvation, constant hunger, or just above it, just living for survival. Okay? And if we are in any of these states, do we have the inner space to meditate on compassion or the correct view of reality? Actually not. If we are hungry, what is our priority? To eat. If we are in pain, what is our priority? To get rid of the pain. And there are people, and not one or two, way too many, that are born in hunger, that live in hunger and die in hunger. And during their life, they have no perspective of something else, but still they strive their whole life in order to get some food. There is no space. There are sure some exceptions, but generally speaking, there is no space in the mind for anything else. Then there are all those people that they have their minimum to eat, but in order to get that minimum, they need to dedicate their whole life for that. From when they wake up to when they go to sleep, and they don't get enough sleep, and their body is being used in a way that is violent to themselves, and so on. Why? Simply for survival. And how many are there like this? Around 2.5 billion. Way too many. Then there are all those that actually, they have the minimum necessary, but still they live their life for simple survival. Which means, in a little bit more fancy way, but there is still survival. It is still getting things that we don't need, so we dedicate the life in order to be able to buy and to gain things that actually truly we don't need. And we remain as slaves of money, as slaves of power, as slaves of pleasures, and the life is just going around that all the time. There are so many people in this way. So there is no inner space for anything else. Then on top of that, then there are people that they wish to follow spiritual path, but they have no idea how and where to start. Then there are all those that follow a spiritual path, but are guided in a wrong way. So if we really look to have the minimum necessarily materially, to have the intention to follow a spiritual path, which means not being slaves. Sure, we like material things and so on, but we are not slaves of it completely. Of wanting to follow a spiritual path, of having someone that guides us correctly on the spiritual path, and having the energy to follow this path. How rare is that? if we look around us, for all the people that we know, is actually very rare. Not everything that is rare is necessarily precious, right? There are some very rare sicknesses that we don't want even to know about. But why is it so precious? Because what we most want is to be happy. And through this spiritual path, it gives us the real tools to bring us to that can bring us to the state of true happiness. That is what we most wish. If we follow the same example as before, finally we can learn how to play a different game and not only change toys, which is to develop our inner qualities and eliminate our negative conditioning, our negative behaviors such as anger and hatred and aversion and jealousy, pride, miserliness, and so on. So we can develop ourselves in order to be able to help others. And this is so precious because through this we can gain two things: inner stability, satisfaction and joy, peace, and we can assure us a better rebirth, which is already not something small actually. We can assure us that if we live in a good way and we train our mind in a positive way and so on, we can assure us that we are going to have a good continuity after death. And this is already quite amazing. No money can ever buy such a thing. No money can ever buy a good rebirth. But these conditions that we have are so precious in this manner. So Pabongkha Rinpoche say, how good that I am alive within these conditions. How wonderful it is. So the first step, or better, the second step, the first step is to rely correctly upon the Guru. The second step is to be happy for the conditions that we have in this life. It's like waking up in the morning and saying, wow, how wonderful I am here with these conditions to practice the Dharma. It doesn't matter if things are going to go well or not well, my work, my family, my friends, but I can practice the Dharma. How beautiful, how wonderful this opportunity I have. Because if we really look, the more we have a perspective that is only of this life, the more we get stuck. And our mental space is stuck with the things only of this life, which is relationship, money, power, body. We are always stuck within these things. And if we don't get things as we want them, then this creates a suffering and conflicts and problems, and we are always stuck within that. When we open our mind to have a perspective that goes beyond this life, that transcends this life, that is in this life but transcends this life, sure, we need to take care of our relationships, we need to take care of our body, we need to take care of our economic and material situation, we need to take care of all of this, but this is just part of the life. It's not the final goal. It's not the objective of life. When we have a view that transcends this life, the objective of life is to generate and cultivate what continues after death. And this makes life meaningful. So that's what Pabongkha Rinpoche is saying here. How happy I am that I am alive, that I didn't die up to now, that I can wake up in this morning with such a wonderful opportunity to practice the Dharma. That's so rare, that's so important. Wow, that's really special. And I'm not going to lose that opportunity. I'm going to make my life meaningful. I'm going to use this opportunity, so-called life, in order to develop my qualities, in order to help others. And as a minimum, I'm going to use this, the day of today, in a positive way. I'm going to make this day a meaningful day. That's the minimum that I should do. It doesn't matter if work, for example, goes well or not. Let's say, by the end of the day, maybe something went wrong in our job, or in our relationship, or materially, or physically. But the question is, do I have more patience? Have I cultivated love? Was I truthful to my principles? Did I develop more wisdom? Or did I cultivate more anger, hatred, aversion, jealousy, and so on? That's a question to make. Sometimes we may have a job and the things do not happen as we expect, and they are not successful, but I come out of that situation with more strength, with more patience, with more stability, with more joy. So, like deeper joy, I come out with more love. So it was a very successful experience. There are times that we go through an experience where we push so much to have success materially that by the end of the experience, yes, we could fulfill our material goal, but we come out with anger, with sadness, with conflicts, and so on. So it was not successful. So the point is, let's make this life meaningful. Let's use it as a tool to develop our qualities and to be of benefit for others. And how wonderful that we are alive, how wonderful that we are here. That's way too precious to lose this beautiful opportunity. Okay? So, we should keep merely today as meaningful. We should use the day of today as being meaningful. And this is the second step on the path to enlightenment. The first step is relying correctly upon the Guru. The second step is to recognize the preciousness of this life, the rarity and preciousness of this life. This is the second step, which are not concepts, are stages of consciousness that we need to develop. The second step is when we wake up and there is so much joy of having this wonderful opportunity of being able to practice Dharma, and I'm not going to lose this opportunity. I'm going to use it in the best way as I can. That's what we need to get. And when we get that, every problem becomes small. It doesn't matter if it's relationship, if it's work, if it's physical, if it's material. They are just part of living. But the main objective is I need to practice Dharma, I need to grow within that. That's the main objective. And once we realize the second step, remember that's the second step before we go to talk about emptiness and shamatha and vipassana or whatever other great stages of mind. First step, rely correctly upon the Guru. Second step, recognize the preciousness of this life. This is so important, but it's like an inner state that we need to develop. And Pabongkha Rinpoche put to us clearly, develop joy for what we have. Develop joy for this precious opportunity that we have. Okay. So we'll stop here now for lunch. Okay. Jetsun lame kutse rapten chi namkar tinle chochur gepa dang losan tembe drove musel tatu ne gyur chi nimo dele tsendele nime kuyan delek shin Ninsen takto delekpe, koncho sumge jinge lo. Sumge ngodrup tsol, koncho sumge trashisho. At dawn or dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness.